Yeah, I saw an interview with Michael Saylor recently where he talked about having an ETF a lot like having a website. That's what I thought was really interesting. And, nowadays, if you want to go to a restaurant or go to a hotel or whatever, I mean, you check the website first and find out like where it is, what it does, et cetera. Imagine not one of these things not having a website. You would probably never travel there. You would probably never eat there because for all intents and purposes, you don't know anything about it and it might not even exist. He said, that's a bit like Bitcoin when you look at these institutions. Before, where do I get the Bitcoin? What is the Bitcoin? What's the price history of the Bitcoin? Like, it's like for them, you need like a ticker, right? And now you can type in on your Bloomberg terminal. I used to use Bloombergs back in the day before we even had the internet. And you type in the ticker and now you see price history. With price history means you can now maybe borrow against it. You can do margin things, all that stuff. So now that that's there, it's all of a sudden become visible to a whole new host of people. So it's brought all those people in. The other thing Michael said at a speech at a conference in Madeira recently, I thought this was interesting. I want to get your take on it, is he told the whole audience there, he said, look, BlackRock is now in and Larry Fink has now become the chief marketing officer for Bitcoin, right? It still boggles my mind when he goes and does interviews and says, Bitcoin is the asset that keeps you safe, right? Amazing things. But they're unleashing their entire marketing machine, and nobody markets better than Wall Street when it comes to putting these instruments in mom and pops, pension funds in America and beyond. And he said, look, these are no longer our enemies. And like you said, traditionally Bitcoiners and crypto people look at banks as our enemies and maybe as fiat currencies and central banks as our enemies. He says, that's not true. These are our friends because this ETF, he said, by grabbing 1% of the supply, has just doubled and tripled everyone's money. He said, imagine if more of these instances happen, like a country adopts it as legal tender or an insurance decides to create a product on Bitcoin. He said, these are our friends. He said, there's two types of people. He says, there's those of us that understand Bitcoin, and then there's those of us that don't understand it yet. That's what he said. And he actually told the whole audience, he said, your job is to go out there and speak to those people, not in a combative way, in a way that shows them the beauty of Bitcoin. What do you think about those comments?
Yeah, no, I think it's 100% right? Like I think the way I'd think about it is now it's a golden opportunity to transform finance itself, right? So like almost like the fact that a lot of these institutions are now allowing people to have Bitcoin at scale, right, is just going to lead to more Bitcoin adoption, right? And I think that has to be a good thing. I mean, I think obviously we've got to be cautious. I mean, I was at the Wall Street Journal during 2007, 2008. I actually got into crypto because I was covering the intersection between structured credit and private equity and looking at like how that interacted. And I sort of looked at the early days of Ethereum and went, this kind of reminds me of like the CDO era, right? Like it was a bunch of very, very smart technologists innovating on where the future of finance. As we know, 2007, 2008 was one of the worst financial crashes in history, right? So it's something that is always a concern because Wall Street does magnify things and do it at scale where it does affect people's pensions, it does affect people's bank accounts, right? I think the great thing though about crypto and Bitcoin and this ETF join is you basically got the price of Bitcoin, right? And it may go up, it may go down, whatever happens to it. And I think most of us are probably listening to this think it will go up substantially, but it clearly has had volatility over time. But the cool thing about that is just one asset, right? Like the banks know how to trade gold, they know how to trade oil, they know how to trade whatever, and it just becomes another thing that they treat a bit like a commodity. And generally that ends up being something that isn't systemic to the banking sector, like the CDOs or whatever, right? Like you say, I think like the DeFi on Bitcoin, DeFi on Ethereum, whatever, that can potentially build up more systemic risk if it ends up getting to scale. But I think what's really nice about the way crypto and Bitcoin have evolved is it's been like a petri dish area where you've just had the smart technologists being able to go away and tinker and do cool stuff. And the experiments get to scale at a way that's not systemic, right? Like Luna was not systemic.
Yeah.
And so I think like at least it's getting battle tested and going through mini crises with like insider smart people who kind of go, oh yeah, this is happening. What should we be watching out for? And typically in financial innovation, like no one really talks about the structured credit market and systemic risk in the structured credit market anymore. I'm sure they will if it begins to build up again. But I think you don't, like, the thing about crypto stress testing is we might not necessarily need a Lehman Brothers because we've had a Celsius and an FTX and whatever, right? So hopefully some of the lessons have been learned.
Yeah, I hope. Although when I joined Wall Street in '93, I remember looking around the floor and they were like, this is the emerging markets desk, and this is the Asian desk, and this is the foreign currency desk. And then they would say, and this was the crisis that happened there 6 years, and this was the Latin American crisis, and this was the ruble devaluation crisis. And I remember I said, this happens every 4 or 5 years. Like, don't you guys ever learn? And they're like, nope, we don't learn. It just cycles. So yeah, we did learn a lot from Celsius and FTX and Terra Luna, but there's definitely more of those coming. It's a human thing to a certain extent, but that is, at least we have that in our past. Yeah. So at least we have a lot of people that know to be suspicious of these things, to know these things. Although with this bull market, it's going to bring in a whole bunch of new actors.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.